This is going to be a video tutorial just to give you some examples of the features and functions of this nitrous controller. This is a three-stage split system, so you have up to 6 timers or 6 channels. Each stage has 2 channels, and you can scroll through each stage and channel by this shaft encoder here. You don't need a laptop to program it or change any time, so you can do any last minute changes in the lanes. So this is an example of stage 1. If you wanted to see stage 2, you would scroll to the right and you would see obviously channel 3 and 4, stage 2, and scroll to the right again and you have channels 5 and 6, and stage 3. And you can quickly scroll through and change any of these timers or parameters. Some of the features of this controller, with all our controllers, but this particular one for the Pro Series Nitrous System, is that you have the ability to delay each stage on, and you can turn it off after a set time. You also have a mode selection, which is hold, restart, and disable. Hold means that if you throttle the car or you pedal it, it will hold the timers and resume from where it left off once the throttle is reapplied. Disable, obviously, regardless if it sees full throttle or not, that if it's selected for disabled a particular channel, it will not work and not turn on. So there's no need to disconnect any wiring if you don't want a particular stage to turn on. And then it has a restart, which is also, if you pedal the car, you have a choice to restart the timer from the beginning. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of that. So let's say I wanted to make a change. I would press down on the shaft encoder and it's going to ask you change, yes or no. Scroll to the left, it'll say yes, hit the enter button. So let's say, for example, I wanted to change the mode as I was describing. This is set from the factory at hold, but if I wanted to make a change, I would press enter where the cursor is flashing and scroll the cursor to the right, and now it's in the mode selection. I would press enter to select that line, and as I'm scrolling through the selection, you can see it change. So hold, restart, disable. So if I'll just put it back for demonstration purposes, back on hold, press enter. It's going to send the cursor back to scrolling through the line, and you just turn the shaft encoder to the left and bring the cursor to the extreme left here where you see the arrow flashing. Hit enter, and then you can move the cursor to the bottom. It's going to ask you save. You can say yes or no. In this case we're going to say yes, and it's saving. So for example, this will have the first channel will be instant right off the trans brake, and the second channel will turn on in 0.3 seconds. Each channel, each stage is completely separate from all the other stages and channels. So basically the timer for that channel is its own entity. So you can have a particular stage come on before stage 1. So for example, if you wanted stage 3 to come on before stage 1, you can select stage 3 channel 1 to come on at 0.00, which is instant, and select stage 1 to be delayed if you wanted to. So different tune-ups, different track conditions. Instead of changing wires around, you can change the timers around. So it makes life a lot easier for tuning. So just to give you a rundown, the switch panel, which is up here, is going to have all your nitrous functions. You have nitrous arm, your 2 line purges, and your motor purge. You cannot motor purge unless the nitrous is armed for safety, but you can always line purge. So at the end of the race, if you decide to want to clear out the line, you can clear out the line by pressing line purge without activating the nitrous. I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration. So for example, now you would arm the nitrous. It has a status nitrous armed. The top right is a global timer, and these timers are for that selected channel. So this is channel 1 and 2. This would be the timer for channel 1 and 2. It also has the input function for 2-step. It has a built-in 2-step or trans brake interrupt. So if it sees 2-step and you're on full throttle, nothing will happen until you release the 2-step. And there's your wide open throttle input, so that you know that the controller is receiving those signals, also for a diagnosis aspect. And as I release the trans brake, the timers will start its sequence. After 10 seconds, even if I have the throttle depressed, it will turn off as a safety feature. So if the throttle does get stuck, or the wide open throttle switch gets stuck, it will, regardless of that input, it will turn off in 10 seconds. So we just implemented that as a safety feature. Once the time has expired of 10 seconds, you cannot reactivate it again, obviously. You would have to turn the nitrous off and back on again to reinitiate the timers for another 10 seconds. You also have the input status for the line purge. So you have line purge 1, LP1, LP2 for line purge 2, motor purge 1, motor purge 2, motor purge 3. In this case here, it's only going to be a 3-stage, so the motor purge 4 will not be active. This controller also has the ability to activate a channel or a stage if selected to do so based on a ground input, an external ground input. So for example, if the ignition system has an RPM window that you want it to work, you select the RPM in which the ground signal will trigger, and the controller must see obviously full throttle and the ground input from the ignition system in order for the selected channel to work. Or you can select it off of a shifter. So if you're running a 5-speed or a manual transmission, or even an automatic if you want it, and you want it to have a certain stage turn on once it receives the shift, so based on a micro switch on the shifter, you're also able to do so on the ground input, and that is done by selecting. You can't make any changes when the nitrous is armed. That's why I turned it off. So we're gonna make a change. So we're gonna hit enter. We're gonna press down on the shaft encoder. We're gonna make a turn left. Press enter again. And let's say, for example, on channel 2, on stage 1. Actually, you know what? A better example. Let me just give you a better example here. So let's say you wanted to leave stage 1 the way it was, but you wanted stage 2 to turn on after the shift, or after it receives a ground input from the shifter. And that's what you'll notice these two asterisks are here for. You'll notice on stage 1 the asterisks are not there, stage 2 they are. We've selected that. Once that asterisk is there on that particular channel, and it has to be valid for each channel. So if you want to have only channel 3, then the asterisk only has to be on channel 3. So as I said, every channel is independent of each other. So you have to tell both channels that you want to see that ground input. Therefore, both asterisks have to be on each channel. And once it receives, again, the ground input, then it will activate that stage. So for example, on full throttle, stage 1 is going to turn on as selected, which is going to be instant, and channel 2 is going to turn on in 0.3 seconds. Channel 3 now has to see the ground input in order for that channel to work. And after it sees that ground input, it's going to be delayed 1 second. And channel 4 will be delayed 1.4 seconds. So channel 4 will come on 0.4 seconds after channel 3. Again, it's all going to be independent of each other. So regardless of what channel 3 says, if you select 1.4, that channel will turn on in 1.4 seconds. For channel 5 and 6, we've selected, for example, disable. So let's say I just want to turn those two channels off. I just select disable in the mode section. Regardless of what the time says here on the on or off time, if it's disabled, it will not turn on. So I'm actually only going to use 2 stages in this case because I have the third stage disabled. So let's go back to stage 2, channel 3 and 4. So we're going to activate it. We're going to have the 2-step input. We're going to have wide open throttle. Now you'll notice that once I release the trans brake, I'm going to mimic a ground input, and you'll also notice a ground sign coming on here, indicating that the controller is getting the ground input. So I'm going to let go of the trans brake, and now the ground input's going to come. That's when those timers start. And if I lift off and back on again, they'll stop and resume where they left off. And after 10 seconds, obviously, they'll turn off. And we have selected hold, and that's why you'll see this H indicating that this channel is set on hold, and the asterisk being there, and it has to see the ground input in order for that channel to activate, and it will hold the timers if you pedal it. And again, same thing for channel 4. Turn the nitrous off. If I wanted to change the ground input and I don't want to use it, you press enter, scroll to the left, press enter again. Now you have the cursor on this line, so that means that you can change any parameter on this line. So you hit enter, scroll through the right, and that's going to bring you to this column. You would then press enter again because you want to make that change to the column. Scroll to the left and you'll see that the asterisk is gone. Now if I wanted to have an off time delay, so let's say for example after channel 3 turns on, I want to turn it off in 2 seconds. So I can go to the off time and go to the seconds, press enter, scroll to the right 2 times, that's 2. Now bring the cursor back to the left side. So now it's going to be delayed 1 second, and after it gets applied, that channel 3, it's going to stay on for 2 seconds and then turn off. Once the cursor is on to the left, then I can scroll down to the other line by pressing enter. It's going to be an inverted arrow, and scroll to the right, and now I can select that. Now that the cursor is flashing on this line, I can select any changes based on this line. So I can do the same and take out the ground input. We'll take that out and scroll back to the left, press enter again. It's going to ask you, do you want to save? Yes or no? Yes, we want to save. Scroll to the left and press enter. And now it's saved those changes. And if you wanted to look at the other stages, you would just scroll through the shaft encoder. These are going to be all your inputs, basically your power, ground, your trans brake signal, so that the system knows that you're on the trans brake. A wide open throttle switch, and this light blue wire represents the ground input either from a shifter or an ignition system. So this would give you a good idea of how the controller works and its functions. It also is going to come with some documentation for instructions as well when you get the kit. And you're also going to have the data cable. You have 2 data cables going to the controller, one of them from the switch panel. The other one is going to go from the controller to the relay driver. And for example, the relay driver on the 3-stage controller is actually our 8 relay controller. Obviously you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 channels, and 2 channels one for each line purge. When you motor purge, obviously both channels are going to turn on at the same time. I'll give you a quick demonstration of that. So when we motor purge, you'll notice that both green lights come on. So 2 outputs indicate 1 channel, and that's why you're getting both of them applied. And line purge is obviously completely separate on a separate relay. And that's our 3-stage nitrous system for racers that want to split systems with up to 6 timers.